Hello everyone, I am Ryota Matsui, a member of Keio University. I will make a presentation on our paper, Human Movement Recognition using internal sensors of a smartphone-based head-mounted display. Recent years, a smartphone-based head-mounted display has become very popular to use virtual reality. We insert a smartphone in a headset to compose it, like this figure. By the way, we often use the touchscreen to control a smartphone. However, it is difficult for us to use the touchscreen of the smartphone while using a smartphone-based head-mounted display because it is enclosed in the headset. So, we often use handheld controllers to control the VR environment like this control menu. On the other hand, various research projects have explored novel interaction methods without any external control devices. One of the methods is movement recognition by smartphone cameras. They use internal cameras of a smartphone to recognize human movements. For example, this research project where a smartphone recognizes the user's hand or foot movements, fastening their smartphone at their wrist or knee. Other researchers sought to track the user's eye movements while using a smartphone-based head-mounted display. Linking the result of movement recognition with various manipulations, we can manipulate the smartphone without any external controllers. Another method is movement recognition by sensors. For example, most smartwatches have various sensors like accelerometer, gyroscope, and a microphone. In this research project, this year, the researchers sought to use these sensors to recognize hand movements which emit sound such as clapping and knocking. And they implemented some applications to control smartphones or IoT devices to extend their operability. In our research, we adopted this method for smartphone-based head-mounted displays. Our suggestion is movement recognition by internal sensors of a smartphone. While using a smartphone-based head-mounted display, we focus on the internal sensor values for each movement. These values are used to recognize human movements, such as jumping and turning. Linking the result of recognition with some inputs to the VR environment, we may be able to control it without any external control devices. In order to evaluate our suggestion, we conducted an experiment to validate recognition accuracy of human movements using sensors. We set 60 types of movements, such as jumping, squatting, leaning the body, and turning, as a target movement to collect sensor values. And we implemented a smartphone application to collect sensor values for each movement from users. While using this application, the users hold their smartphone at the eye level, the position of it while using a smartphone-based head-mounted display. And this application presents each of 60 movements in random order. The user is to conduct the presented movement, and it is detected by the fluctuation of sensor values. After detection, sensor values are recorded for 1.6 seconds around the detected time period. However, 3 of 60 movements Stationary, walking on the spot, and jogging on the spot are difficult to be detected because those head movements are relatively small. So, these three types of movements are detected by the user's button operation shown in the smartphone display. After the operation, sensor values are recorded for 1.6 seconds. These data are used to validate recognition accuracy of human movement. First, we use three stages of preprocessing to make it easier to recognize movements. First stage is the standardization of each dimension. This stage eliminates any inequalities of contribution between each dimension. Second stage is fast Fourier transform to convert the data to frequency components. At this moment, each data has 192 dimensions. Final stage is a principal component analysis to reduce the data dimension to 32 dimensions. After the processing, the whole data are divided into the training data and the test data. The training data are used to generate and support vector machine classifier, and the test data are used to recognize movements. Then we go to the overview of our experiment. In this experiment, we collected sensor values of each movement from 4 participants using the data collecting application to validate recognition accuracy of our method. And each participant repeated each of 60 movements 20 times. As a result, a total of 1,280 data are collected. Please note that due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we cannot experiment on site. So, we remotely made a presentation about this experiment to the participants and distributed the application via the internet. Before going to the result of our experiment, I explain K-fold cross-validation. This is a method to divide the data into the training data and the test data. First, we set K, the number of subsamples. Each one of K subsamples includes the whole data of the base data. And each one of the base data are included in one of K subsamples as the test data, and the rest of K subsamples are the training data. For each of K subsamples, we evaluate the recognition accuracy. And the average of the accuracy is thought as the evaluation value. Then going to the result of our experiment. First, we use K-fold cross-validation for each participant's data with 10 subsamples. It means that a classifier is generated for each participant. As a result, the confusion matrix is shown in this figure, and the average recognition accuracy for 16 movements was about 92%. Focusing on this confusion matrix, we can see that the accuracy for walking on the spot and jogging on the spot was relatively low, though the other 40 movements exceed 90%. Walking on the spot and jogging on the spot about 48% and 66% respectively. Particularly, walking on the spot tended to be recognized as stationary. We think this is because of the small size of the head movement. And by eliminating these two movements from the target movements and recognizing only the other 40 movements, the accuracy increased to about 97%. The second experiment is the relationship between the experimental condition and the recognition accuracy. First, we use three types of data division methods. The first method is training by each participant, dividing each participant's data based on k-fold cross-validation. This is the same condition as the previous experiment. The second method is training by all the participants, dividing all participants' data based on k-fold cross-validation. Unlike training by each participant, the classifiers are shared between the users. The third method is training by the other participants, dividing all participants' data based on leave one subject out cross-validation. For example, focusing on these subsamples, all data from participants B, C, and D are used as the training data, and all the data from participant A are used as the test data. One of the features is that each classifier does not have any data from the user to recognize. And if we can use this method, each user does not need to fit the classifier to them. We think this is a big advantage of this method. And we also focus on time spans of data. We use not only the whole data of 1.6 seconds, but also the partial data of 0.4 seconds and 0.8 seconds. These data are prepared by selecting the quarter and the half of the whole data. If we can use these shortened time spans of data, the classifier can recognize movements more quickly. As a result, the relationship between time spans of data, methods of data division, and recognition accuracy are shown in this figure. We can see that accuracy for training by the other participants was relatively low, this red line. We think this is because the classifier cannot consider each participant's physical characteristics, which influence the behavior of each movement. And we can also see that shortening the time span causes a decrease in the accuracy. Particularly, when we shorten the time span of data to 0.4 seconds, the recognition accuracy decreases significantly. We think this is because sensor values around this time period can include some characteristics which are important for movement recognition. By shortening the time span, these values can be lost. At final, we will tell you the limitations and future work. First limitation is the long time lag from the direction of a movement to the end of recognition. As shown in the previous slide, shortening the time span of data causes a decrease in the accuracy. So, we will cope with both high recognition accuracy and short time lag. The second limitation is the effects of the movements on the VR environment. For example, while watching a VR movie, the viewpoint is inevitably changed by the user turning. So, we need to select movements that do not cause a conflict with another function of VR. So, we will think about appropriate association between movements and manipulations as a future work. That's the end of our presentation. Thank you for your listening, and I look forward to your questions.